Recently, I got into a discussion with some friends of a friend on Facebook. Most of the time was spent arguing with some women who did not like the idea that I did not take personal anecdotes as hard evidence, which was ironic because they dismissed my own anecdote for the same reason I did not accept theirs. Plus, they implied that the fault in the story was actually mine, and I deserved what happened to me. It got pretty heated, and even I lost my usual even-tempered attitude and told off one of the participants, which, of course, was then used as reason to dismiss me further, make a bunch of unfounded accusations about my beliefs and my self-worth, even to the point of getting one of my comments deleted by Facebook for a supposed community guidelines violation. Ironically, the post was reported for telling someone that she was too easily offended to be on the internet. Anyway, I started a new thread later, and one of the participants probably seemed perhaps considering maybe having a rational discussion, but I still got the feeling that she was already dismissing me before I've even spoken. We began to discuss the wage gap. Yeah, I know. But the good news is she seems to accept the whole 70 cents on the dollar spiel is based on the average earnings of men and women and does not consider different jobs or hours worked. So that is a relief, and it saves me a lot of time. What remains is a gender disparity in certain prestigious fields and lower performances in things like math. She believes that both of these are caused by social engineering. She cites studies that presented children with pictures of adults and asked them to identify which person was really, really smart and which person was, quote, nice. The 5-year-olds tended to select their own gender as being the really, really smart person. However, when the test was repeated with 7-year-olds, the gender bias persisted only among the boys. This was interpreted as decreasing confidence among young girls. She also sent me another article that described fears and conceptions that hinder the performance of older girls and young women. Apparently, the mere idea of the stereotype of women underperforming in math is enough to adversely affect their test scores when they are in a classroom with men. However, when removed from the burden of being near males, the extra cognitive burden women have is also removed, and their scores increase. Now, my feminist friend interprets this as a negative feedback loop that causes the illusion of natural performance differences in men and women. She, like many, believe that the limits on intelligence is actually a learned behavior caused by the aforementioned social engineering. Children notice the gender disparity in certain fields, and then they become stuck on the notion of boy jobs and girl jobs. This forever taints their perspectives and influences their future life choices. Now, I am pretty skeptical about that for 2 reasons. Firstly, boys do not tend to start noticeably outperforming girls in math and science until the middle school years, long after the gender notion of abilities has supposedly been ingrained in the minds of young elementary school-aged children. And those superior scores only exist in the standardized testing administered to students every year. Girls in general tend to get better grades than boys in all levels of school, and have been doing so for quite some time. The reasons for this are quite complex, and as I am not embedded into an ideology of victimhood, I am not going to look at this single statistic and instantly conclude that boys are being oppressed in schools. This is also the age when children start puberty, and it's not like puberty ever made gender differences more noticeable. Second, and most damning, is the anthropological history of the human race. Humans love to eat meat. It's delicious, it's nutritious, it's full of complete proteins that we need to survive. It is a far better source of calories than flora, especially the wild-type flora that existed before we had the ability to artificially select our crops.
This salad's fantastic, so fresh.
These days, food of all varieties is not exactly in short supply to most of us, at least in the West. But rewind the clock a few million years and our early hominid ancestors were surviving mostly on what they could find growing around or what they could scavenge from recently killed prey. Later, the more evolved intelligent Homo sapiens were able to develop more sophisticated hunting techniques. Gathering fruits and vegetables is a necessary task to keep your fellow early quaternary citizens not dying. but an infusion of fresh meat would have been a burst of caloric energy that greatly increased the likelihood that the community will survive and grow larger. Unfortunately, hunting was not exactly the safest way to kill some time. That's where those differences between men and women come into play. Men have one thing that women just don't. Well, at least not very much of it. Testosterone. Among testosterone's strange and whimsical effects are increases in muscle mass, aggression, and tendency to take risks. Now that last one is very important. All humans have a strong instinct for self-preservation, and that is very difficult to overcome. Testosterone helps us men do just that. When a man and a woman both see something like a wild wildebeest grazing in a plain, women are more likely to avoid messing with it, but a man is more likely to set aside his fears in order to attempt to kill it and eat it. Humans are communal creatures. Instead of a single family unit attempting to go at it alone, you have a bunch of families working together. The result was that the more cautious women staying behind in the villages survive with greater frequency than the more daring men. But even with some of the men being killed or maimed, the overall strength of the community was increased, not decreased, due to the extra food. So the two human genders evolved to complement each other, not to be identical. Fast forward to today. Evolutionarily speaking, humans have not really changed from our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Women today are still better at distinguishing between subtle differences of color than men. This helped them identify fruits that were ready to be picked. Women are not as adept at blocking out background noise and focusing on a single task as men, and men are not as good at multitasking as women. This allowed men to focus better on dangerous tasks, while women were better at conducting tasks while simultaneously making sure that their bratty little kids didn't stick rocks up their nose or something else dumb like that. So, what effect do differences such as these have on modern humans? The slightly larger reasoning centers men tend to have gives us an edge in things like mathematics, spatial awareness, and logic, which is why we tend to dominate most of the STEM fields. There is another area we tend to dominate that you do not tend to hear many feminists complaining about. The majority of emergency room patients are men between the ages of 14 to 25. Why is this? Are boys being conditioned by social engineering to do stuff like this? Or are girls systematically excluded from the prestigious field of hurting themselves?
Oh my god!
I think it's something more like this. Unlike our hunter-gatherer progenitors, pubescent boys are not able to expend their time and energy doing physical labor or training to hunt under the tutelage of an tribal elder who had been fortunate enough to survive to the ripe old age of 28. Now, take a look inside the brain of a teenage boy. Combine an exaggerated estimation of one's abilities, limited knowledge and experience, and an underdeveloped frontal cortex. Marinate it in testosterone and give it too much free time, and what do you get? Free running fails, misusing shopping carts, and putting explosive devices. Never mind. If they survive being idiots for 15 years, gain some experience, and that all-important frontal cortex, things will start looking up for them. Adult men will still be prone to take risks, but that is tempered by experience and forethought. This makes men more likely than women to undertake risky career-related endeavors. And you know what they say, the bigger the risks, the bigger the rewards. I know that for a long time, it was not seen as socially acceptable for women to enter certain occupations. There are far more women in engineering under the age of 35 than there are middle-aged and older women. It is now such a social faux pas to even suggest that women might be less suited for certain roles that being accused of doing so can literally end your career. But to expect that gender parity will ever be achieved without forcing it is unrealistic. On the other hand, it is considered politically correct to come right out and say that men shouldn't be given certain jobs, should not have opinions, and shouldn't continue living. There's one final question. What to say about the perceptions of women and girls? Humans evolved the ability to create models of predictive utility in their minds. Unfortunately, our minds are also very good at giving us the illusion of competence by filling in the blanks of our knowledge with our own assumptions. Sometimes these assumptions can be correct when based on accurate data, but in most cases, the gaps are so large that our beliefs cannot possibly be accurate, no matter how strongly we feel about them. Being able to recognize this cognitive bias in our own thinking and remain ever skeptical of our current conclusions is a difficult skill to master, but it is essential in order to remain rational and reasonable. Children, as much as we love them, are ignorant, impressionable, gullible little shits. With their squishy, unfinished little brains, they are particularly bad at making models. No! But they are a little better at recognizing patterns. Kids are going to notice that most of their doctors and computer technicians are men, and most of their teachers and nurses are women. The fact that some kids are going to misinterpret this as some jobs being exclusively gendered is unfortunate, but no less irreparable or indicative of our society impressing a gendered ideology than my 6-year-old sister misinterpreting the opaque blue sky as being a solid shell covering a flat plane is indicative of our society impressing upon our children the ideology of the Flat Earth Society. As far as the anxiety of women in college math classes and their scores improving when the extra burden is removed, I know from personal experience, yes, there's that word, personal experience, that being given the privilege to take tests outside of class and being given extra time and even extra resources can improve your test scores. But that is because I have a disability, and being a woman is not a disability. There just is no practical way you can avoid having to do math in the presence of men. The best I can do is try to dissuade your fears. Do you really think that there are any people in math college classes that think like this?
There's a woman in my math class. I wonder if she will confirm my preconceived stereotypes of a woman's abilities in math. Wait, there's 7 Asian students in this class? And it's curved? F this, I might as well drop this class right now.
Because I can assure you, 99% of math students of either gender think more like this.
This is a test on line integration, not on memorizing the integration table. I can't derive it in 30 minutes and finish the test. Wait, that doesn't look right. Checking. Oh no, I didn't distribute X right.
I don't miss college. Finally, girls are less likely than boys to drop out of high school. There are more women than men in college, earning degrees at all levels. There are less women dropping out of college than men, and overall women's grades are still higher than men's. There are more support and scholarships available to women, and although there are less women in engineering than men, they have an easier time getting hired. So I ask you quite seriously, how many statistics must be in favor of women before women are no longer oppressed?
Ask yourself this. What is it about the concept of wage inequality that makes you so uncomfortable? No, you lost a chance to be taken seriously with your temper tantrum, you f***ing man-child. You don't deserve any respect or consideration after that horribly stupid and emotional display. I'm just fighting illiteracy, one Trump voter at a time. Seriously, he thinks he's a big, intimidating man when he's really only showing how uneducated and insecure he is on a topic that doesn't include him. You fly into a rage at the slightest hint of criticism. You have discounted my opinions because of my gender numerous times, just like you did to others during your rage-filled rant. You won't take our real lived experiences as proof because you have biased sources that only serve to fit into your narrative. Why do you personally feel the need to attempt to shame those who have lived it? That's a hard truth that we, not you, live with daily. Our sources are just as valid as yours because we are living proof.
Get the f*** out of here with that bullshit sexist mansplaining ego trip! Hopefully the Chinese government will detain him and he'll never be heard from again!
Clearly, the root of this is he knows he's a sexist, but is deeply ashamed of that and unwilling to accept it. Therefore, he is lashing out against women who are calling him out on it. It is a character flaw that he is deeply insecure about. It's illustrating why you don't have the right to dispute our lived experiences as females who have dealt with wage inequality. At the end of the day, he just can't admit that his beliefs are based on sexism. Please don't attempt to tell women what their lived experience are about ever again, and they won't do the same to you. I will not bite my tongue simply because you say so. You have not shown me or any of the other women here respect, and therefore you will not receive my good graces.
But you are sexist if you disagree with feminism as an entire concept, and racist if you disagree with BLM.
Look, I'm sure you think you're right, and that's just how it's gonna be.
Proceeds to be verbally assaulting because his widow feelings got hurt, okay? See you at the next All Lives Matter rally. Suck my dick. I believe pedophilia is the main issue. You can't erase thousands of years of natural-born predators.
That stumps whatever consensus poll you may have, or women who have been thankful enough not to have encountered issues in the careers that millions of women have.
Why do you feel the need to assert your dominance and superiority by trying to argue women into conceding to you? That's very narcissistic and egocentric behavior. Time to block this f***ward. Please learn to be humble enough to walk away. You are seriously too big about yourself. Enjoy that echo chamber you keep claiming others are in while you try to maintain that somehow your opinion is enlightened. Please find a use for your life. Constructive conversation went out the window after you verbally assaulted other women in this thread.
F*** off. My experience, along with everyone else's, is extremely valuable. Giant hypocrite trying to impose your opinion on something that doesn't involve you. We know the truth, and you're just too immature to want to accept what we have lived with.
Run along now. Go bother someone else with your superiority complex and leave us unsupervised women alone to continue our agenda to emasculate the world's men.
What's pathetic is you insulting a group of women and trying to act superior when you're proving you don't have any actual facts to back up your asinine disagreement.
Yes, because everything you've said is based on
stereotypes and sexist social conditioning. You tried to claim that men should do the thinking because women can't be rational because they're too close to gender pay inequality, something that directly affects women, not men. You don't give a sexist response as a way of trying to convince someone their viewpoint is not the same as yours. That's asinine and is actually emotionally manipulative.
Oh my god!
Oh my God!
I don't miss college. 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 I don't miss college.
Hopefully the Chinese government will